Greetings again, everyone, and I'm very, very, very glad to see you in this room joining. And I had a short presentation that I will give you the reason or the reason why in UNIMA Burundi we've prepared and thought and organized these meetings that today we've been honored to be host to host Cariad also from British UNIMA. And we are very, very, very honored and glad to have her in here in this room. And I am Ehaste Mandera. I'm puppeteer and also playwright, dramatist, Burundian. I am Burundian, based in Burundi, and I'm growing artistically in Burundi. So today the UNIMA Burundi text of today that we prepared raises some questions. The questions are like, what if puppetry could break borders and barriers? What if from Burundi to the United Kingdom, it became a shared language capable of bringing artists and audiences together around common imagination? And what if, even from behind our screens, we tried to speak the language of puppetry, shared stories and experiences across distances? It is in this spirit that the initiative UNIMA Burundi, meetings with UNIMA Centres in Africa and around the world, was launched within the framework of the twinning agreement between UNIMA Burundi and UNIMA Italy, signed on 27th November 2024. The initiative aims to create a space for dialogue and exchange, strengthening connections between UNIMA centers and encouraging a better understanding of puppetry practices in different cultural contexts. Burundi is often known as a country of drums and dances, with a rich and vibrant cultural heritage. Yet, the art of puppetry has long remained little known or unknown and underdeveloped. This raises a number of questions. What places does puppetry hold in the world of today? Is it mainly for children, a traditional or a ritual practice, or a contemporary form capable of speaking to all generations? For this meeting, UNIMA Burundi have then the pleasure today of welcoming Cariad Asso, President of British UNIMA. Through this exchange, we will be exploring some questions together and open a dialogue between different perspectives and experiences of puppetry around the world. Thank you very much. And I guess for now, the floor is for Cariad, and we would like her to make a short presentation of herself. Thank you very much. Cariad, welcome.
Thank you so much, Eraste, and what a pleasure, what an honor to be here participating with you with UNIMA Burundi. I was very happy to get the invitation, so I thank you for the invitation. And I think the questions that you have raised about what puppetry does and what puppetry can do in the world are really important, because we live in a very complex world. We live in a world with a lot of problems and a lot of conflict and a lot of behavior and practice that does not bring people together, that does the opposite of bringing people together. So I think that anything that can bring people together in the interests of peace, cooperation, communication, storytelling, sharing is a positive thing. Um, you asked me to do a short presentation of myself, and I will do that, and also of British UNIMA. So I am a puppeteer, a puppetry trainer, puppetry performer, director, researcher, writer. I have been doing puppetry for a long time. It's something like 30 years or something like that. I started training as a performer in theatre myself. And when I was training, I became very interested in masks because we did some training in masks. And I loved working with masks. And I remember thinking that maybe if masks can be so powerful, maybe puppets could also be so powerful as well. Because what I really liked about masks, amongst other things, I suppose there were two things I really liked about masks. One thing was that masks enable you to play somebody or something in a freer way, in a way which liberates aspects of you that you don't know are there. That was the first thing. The second thing I really liked about mask work was that when you're performing with a mask on, you're not only performing an individual, but you are performing a community. You're performing an idea. You're performing something that is bigger than the individual. So those were two things that really, really inspired me about mask work. And so I thought, well, I would like to work in puppetry and see if these same things apply. And basically, when I finished my studies as a performer, I went and worked with a puppet company as a trainee puppeteer, trainee performer, and I just then got addicted. And I discovered that puppetry does all of these things, like that masks do, and it also does many, many other things. And so I started working as a performer in puppet theatre. This was in London. It was a time in London when there was quite a lot of interest in multicultural, cross-cultural, intercultural performance. And I was working with a Latin American puppet company with refugees from Chile, exiles, political exiles from Chile. So I worked with them for a number of years, and then I worked with other companies. I worked for some years with the Little Angel Theatre in London, which is the most famous puppet theatre in the UK. And when I worked there, you know, the Little Angel has got a quite important reputation in high quality puppet theatre shows, mainly for children, not only for children. And I worked on lots of different styles of puppetry, including string marionettes, shadow puppets, glove puppets, rod puppets, tabletop puppets, giant puppets. And I really got a very good grounding in lots of different styles and lots of different technical aspects of puppetry as well. So I worked with different companies. I worked with a lot of different companies in the UK. And at some point, I don't know exactly when, but at some point, I was invited to do some teaching in a university with theatre students, and I did. I directed some shows by the Spanish playwright Federico Garcia Lorca, which are very funny, very satirical, very outrageous in some ways. And after that, I got increasingly invited to teach in universities. So I started working in one university, that was the University of Plymouth. And basically, since then, I've been spending about half, sometimes more than half my time teaching and training in puppetry in university settings. I ran a puppetry degree in London at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama for 14 years, and that course closed in 2020. The school closed a lot of the small courses in that year, which was the year of the pandemic. Lots of worries about economics, and the puppetry course was a relatively small course in that school. I still work there as puppetry tutor. I work with drama in education students, and I work with contemporary performance practice students, and I lead productions and projects in puppetry, specializing in different areas, often specializing in object theatre, in storytelling, in theatre for young people, and in applied puppetry. I'm also currently puppetry tutor, drama lecturer at Exeter University, and I work with visual and physical theatre at Exeter University. So I have different university kind of affiliations. I also do quite a lot of international teaching and training in puppetry. Focusing on directing and performing puppetry, but also sometimes focusing on some quite interesting connections. Let's say I did a masterclass. I've done masterclasses on puppetry and poetry. I've done that was with Spare Parts Puppet Theatre in Australia. I've done 2 masterclasses at the Theatre of the Night, Theater der Nacht in Northeim in Germany. The first one of those was on puppets and ghosts. It was about this idea of where do puppets live and how do they work across these different worlds of life and non-life and death. And I did another masterclass there 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, which was about puppetry and threshold, focusing particularly on applied puppetry and how puppetry is and can be used in healing context, which has become a big interest of mine. And I work quite a lot also in China, especially teaching teachers and people who work with young people, drama in education specialists, training them in puppetry. I do a little bit of directing work, and I do a little bit of performing work. So that gives you a bit of an overview. I am the chair of British UNIMA currently. British UNIMA is, as you can imagine, it's the British Centre of the international organisation, and we go through phases in our work. Unlike some countries in Europe, British UNIMA is entirely unfunded, except from membership fees from our members. Our membership is hovering around the 200 people mark at the moment. And what we do in British UNIMA is we try and provide information, resources, training, webinars, meeting places for British puppeteers to encounter, to meet, and to know more about international puppetry. There are various puppetry organisations in the UK, as there often are in different countries. So British UNIMA is one of about 4 main puppetry organisations. There is one organisation which is for Punch and Judy, which is the traditional glove puppet form of the UK. That is called the Punch and Judy Fellowship, and the people who are members are Punch and Judy performers, practitioners. Another organisation is the British Puppet and Model Theatre Guild. This is a very old organisation and has been going longer than British UNIMA. It is an organisation which particularly celebrates and works with the craft of puppet theatre. So, and model theatre. And by model theatre, I mean paper theatre and other traditional forms of theatre. So this is an organisation which has lots of activities, both online, both offline, a little bit like British UNIMA, which does both online and offline meetings and workshops and so on. But they're very much focused on the practice of British puppeteers, whereas British UNIMA is the connection with the international world of puppetry. And then there is another organisation which is called Puppeteers UK. This is an umbrella organisation. It was set up to try and bring the other organisations together and provide a sort of strategy or process for kind of getting the art form really recognised and acknowledged. Certainly, British puppeteers would love it if the art form were a named and listed art form within the Arts Council categories, which currently it is not. It is recognised as one of many different categories within the Arts Council, but it is not a funded category in its own right. So it comes under drama, sometimes comes under craft, sometimes comes under applied arts. So, because we know that puppetry can fall into different categories, but we're currently working towards the recognition for puppetry as its own distinct and unique and funded and supported art form, in the same way that drama is, in the same way that opera is, in the same way that dance is. But it's, you know, like it is in many countries, this is an ongoing kind of quest that we hope to have some success with sometime in the future. So we run usually we run one or two events each month. These are often in the form of talks, international practitioners who are talking about their work, sharing their activity. Sometimes they are workshops, online or in-person workshops. We've had workshops in Lambi Lambi, paper theatre, other things over the years. And we also have an annual lecture, which is provided by somebody who can talk about some aspect of international puppetry. We have an annual AGM where we usually try and include either a performance or a workshop of some kind. We have quite a lot of sort of young puppeteers who come to the AGM and perform works in progress. For example, last time we collaborated with Puppet Place in Bristol in the UK, which is one of very few puppetry focused buildings in the UK, which is not a theatre, it's not a hosting theatre, it's a place for workshops, and it's a place which hosts artists, puppetry artists working on their work and that they have rehearsal space and they have workshop space and they collaborate with other artists in the space. And then we try and collaborate with festivals. There are a few international festivals in the UK. So if those festivals are inviting international artists, for example, then we try and support that a little bit by providing maybe some funding for a workshop or a talk which goes alongside the performances that those artists are coming to do. There are a few puppet festivals in the UK, and none of them are guaranteed. They all have to apply for funding each time. And it's very sad that this year there are two important puppetry festivals which don't have funding this time. They may do in the future. Those festivals are Beverley Puppet Festival in Yorkshire and Newcastle Puppet Festival called Moving Parts. Didn't get the big funding that they wanted to run the festival. There are other puppet festivals in the UK. There's one in Tunbridge Wells in the south, which is a small festival but quite important, runs over about 4 to 5 days. There is Nottingham Puppet Festival, which is a very important festival which does include some international work. That usually runs every other year. And there are other smaller festivals like Smethwick Festival, one in Birmingham, a smaller festival in Bath, and Of course, I haven't mentioned the big festival in Scotland called uh, um, Manipulate, which happens every year. This is a very important international festival, and that seems to be fairly secure at the moment. Fingers crossed, touch wood, etc. So that just gives you a bit of an overview of me and a
Yeah.
bit of an overview of British UNIMA as well. What I propose to do before we go into sort of more conversation, perhaps, is share a few images of my work with you, which I have on a PowerPoint, which I can share. This is just some projects that I have been involved in, and it might also stimulate some conversation or some questions. So if it's all right, then I will share that with you and I'll talk through that. So that will
Yes.
hopefully
Yes.
appear
Mm.
any minute now. So I believe that you can see that now.
Yes.
Okay. So these are just images.
Yes.
So I will just talk through the different images. I don't know why the image isn't appearing on that slide. Slightly worrying. Um, just give me a minute while I maybe try and do that again. You can't see my screen now, is that right?
Yes. 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 It's
Just me.
just disappear. Yeah. But I think
I will try again. Let's see if it works this time. Technical issues. It's showing the PowerPoint, but it's not showing the images on the PowerPoint.
yeah, we did
Aha!
see.
Can you see that?
Yes. Now
Okay.
it's yeah.
So now you can see a couple of images. Okay, this is from a show which was made entirely out of paper. It was done with students and it was called entirely out of paper and strings and threads. It was called Strings and Yarns, and it was based on the idea that puppets are uh, connected to their puppeteers by different things. And it's also the idea that the word yarn has got two meanings. The word yarn means both wool, but it also means a story. So it was the idea of connecting the idea of something which is made of string or some kind of thread with the idea of spinning a story. And it was the story, basically, it was a story of finding the stories that we encounter which are hidden. So it was based on the idea of a central character, this character here on the right, who was an archaeologist, who was excavating, was seeking for hidden stories. I'm very interested in the idea of hidden stories, and I think this is something quite important that puppetry can do for us. Um, this was a show that of Macbeth, the Shakespeare play show of Macbeth, with life-size puppets playing the witches, that I directed for the Northcote Theatre in Exeter, which is a big city very close to where I live. This was working with actors who had not previously worked with puppets. And as you can see, the puppets are made of a variety of materials, but they're quite sort of scraggy, and they represent the idea that the witches, which are sort of transparent figures, might be there or might not be there. These are just some images from some of my training practices. So this image on the left here was of a character from another Shakespeare play, from Pericles, of Antiochus. And these, as you can see, the puppeteers are learning how to control, how to animate a figure collectively by using their own hands in the arms of the puppet. This puppet, the head is made essentially of paper mache, and the body is made of foam, so it's quite light, and there are no legs, so it's a long coat which is covering the puppet's body. And this show here was a sort of semi-object theatre show of one of Lorca's plays, the puppet play of Don Cristobal, which was created by one of the students that I was teaching. And the idea was to use bags in some way, was to use bags as the bodies of the puppets as they go through this funny but satirical story. This slide shows some puppetry trainings, students learning to animate different kinds of puppets, but essentially tabletop puppets. So working together on the principles of puppetry, thinking about how to bring a puppet to life, how to bring it breath and movement, and how to collaborate with other people on a single puppet using these different puppets, which are all 3-person tabletop puppets made of a variety of materials, including foam, paper mache, and wood. And so this is a training session, basically. I don't really know why some of those images were visible and some of them weren't. So what I'm going to try and do is share the PowerPoint again. And if I can't show those images in larger form, I might be able to show them to you in smaller form. So just hold on one second and I will try and do that again. Right, so you only saw the pictures from slide 10, but there are, right, maybe you'll be able to, it's not going to show those, is it? It's not going to show those images for some reason. How very frustrating. Well, you probably can't see them, unfortunately, but this was a training workshop that I did in Singapore with participants from across Southeast Asia on applied puppetry, how to use puppetry in social contexts. This was a production of Faust. This was another student production. Then we go into some autobiographical work done by students where they're making images of themselves in some way. An applied puppetry project about healthcare, about how to find appropriate healthcare, and some children's workshops here, working in schools across Catalonia in northwest Spain on a project which is about child rights. So basically I use puppetry in collaboration with forum theatre in order to engage the children in understanding about child rights and how to activate how to do interactive theatre using puppets about child rights. I also do another project in Spain every year, which is about peaceful coexistence. It's with quite young children, children of between the ages of approximately 4 and 7, where they make bird puppets. And I tell a story with puppets, which is about how the birds need to share a tree, but they can't because some of them are bigger and want more space, and some of them have many children and want lots of space for the children, and some of them are noisy and want to make a noise all night, and some of them want to make a noise all day, and basically they fight. And the children are invited with their own puppets to find solutions for these birds for living in a tree together. So I don't know why that PowerPoint wouldn't show the images. Maybe I can send it to you afterwards and you will be able to see it. But I suppose I'll say one more thing before I invite questions and discussion, is that I've done quite a lot of specialization in hospital settings and healthcare settings. Don't know why that came about. It just evolved over the years. My youngest son, who's now in his 20s, in his early 20s, he was very, very ill when he was little, and we spent a lot of time in hospitals, and maybe that affected my interest in working in hospitals later. But I do projects I do bedside puppet shows for children in hospital. I train doctors and nurses using puppetry to develop skills in empathy and care, and to not treat the human body just as an object or a specimen or a collection of illnesses, but to treat it as a holistic human being. And I do quite a lot of work in care homes as well, working with the elderly, working with people with dementia, using puppets as, I'm going to call it narrative medicine, to engage the participants in co-created stories, which may or may not activate memory. That's not so much the point, but more to celebrate and share narratives and choices, agency and autonomy. So I think I've been talking for quite a long time. I hope that wasn't too long. I'm going to say over to you. Questions, and let's begin the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cariad. That was, I can say that was huge and much more inspiring. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I would also like to mention one thing, that the discussion is like open for everyone who is here in this room. And I also want to say that everyone who feel to speak, who feel to ask, who feel to intervene in this discussion is very, very, very much welcomed. Yes, and thank you very much for the, yes, Tiberius.
Okay, thank you for this time. I would like just to congrats this one from British UNIMA for the presentation. It was so inspiring, and we can't wait to listen to her. So I have one question. As a young artist, what could you advise them to do or to behave to grow well in puppetry and to build their names as you did in this important discipline of art? I don't know if this question is clear enough, or just if I can just clarify a little bit.
I think it's a lovely question, Tbilisi, and thank you very much for your response to the presentation. I think it's a really good question. Why? Because it's the young people that we need to support, and we need to enable young people to make art and to make puppetry. You ask what young people can do to grow in the art form, and we know that in some countries, in many countries around the world, puppetry does not have the same infrastructure as other kinds of performance or craft, for example. So what I would say is various things. First of all, young puppeteers need meeting places. So let's create those meeting places for them to come together and try stuff out. That's one thing that I have seen over my years has just been really, really important, because in order to grow in an art, you need to know the possibilities. And you can't know all the possibilities by yourself, even with watching videos and watching, material. For people to come together and exchange and be brave and to show stuff and to receive feedback and to try stuff out and maybe work with other people, collaborate, they need the meeting places. So let's try, whether we are young ourselves or old like me, let's try and create these meeting places for encounter. And in those meeting places, let's enable the sharing of the art form. So they're not just talking meeting places, but they're actually doing meeting places as well. So that's one thing that I would say. If you are a young puppeteer or a person who is young and you're interested in finding out about puppetry, activate or agitate or advocate as much as you can for those meeting places. They don't have to be big, and it doesn't have to happen in a big city. They can happen anywhere. They can happen in a region. They can happen in a village. They can happen in a town. But let's try and enable those open spaces, which are places where people feel safe to show material and feel safe to try stuff out and have fun together. The next thing I would say is what I've seen over the years of involvement in theatre and puppetry is that you don't need expensive materials to make puppets. You can make puppets with almost anything. And I've always been really excited by the idea that people do make puppets out of anything that they have in their surroundings, because I really, really believe that the desire to create and the desire to create forms which are related to the human condition and, let's say, the animal condition and the plant condition, the whole organic condition of life, if you like. This is a real desire and urge in the human being, in all human beings. We all imagine faces in trees. We all imagine faces in our shoes. We all imagine life forms existing around us. So I think it's a really basic wish and need and creative impulse. So I would say for young puppeteers, encourage young puppeteers to make puppets and play with puppets which are made out of anything at all, any kind of material which is surrounding them. Materials that are easy to find, because in some ways puppetry is always made by local materials, because that's what we have, that's what we can find. The third thing I would say is that I think it's really, really helpful also for young people to have mentorship. So to find people who have been maybe doing puppetry for some time, or whether it's puppetry or storytelling or making theatre in different contexts, for those older people or for those more experienced people, to really support the development and training of young people in a kind of supportive way, and not in a way which puts up barriers and boundaries between, I'm such a great artist, I don't want to share my art. Fortunately, most people who do puppetry are not really like this. Fortunately, most puppeteers that I've met anyway over the years are really collaborative, sharing people, because it's kind of at the heart of puppetry in a way, because we're not centering ourselves, we're centering another thing which is outside of ourselves. And then the fourth thing I would say to encourage young puppeteers is be brave, be bold, make work, make shows. Even if the shows are only 5 minutes long, it doesn't matter. If the shows are half an hour long, it doesn't matter. Make work and invite people to see your work and get feedback on your work. See as much puppetry as you can, wherever that is, whether that's live, going to festivals, or whether it is online, on videos, whatever means is accessible to you. And I would encourage them to seek out places, festivals, events, training courses, workshops where they can go to and where they can meet other people and work with other people, because the best puppetry, I think, is always made when you're working with other people. So let's be collaborative in our art forms. That's some of the things I would say to encourage young puppeteers. And I also just want to really say again and reiterate that this is the future. We need young people, we need their ideas, we need their vision. And one more thing I would say to encourage young people is tell your stories. We've all got stories. We've got stories of ourselves, we've got stories of our cultures, we've got stories of difficult stories of awful things happening. We've got stories of funny things happening. But I love collecting stories, and I always find stories in the people I meet. And people have such crazy lives and crazy stories. You don't need to go very far. You talk to your neighbor, they've got some mad story of something that happened in their life. Write these things down or record them or store them, but keep them and write your own stories down, or store or record them, or draw them in some way, because puppetry is about telling stories. And so I would encourage the young people to tell their own stories, the stories that matter to them. They can be plays that have been written by playwrights, or they can be folk tales that have been passed down and heard by other people, but choose the stories that matter to you as young people, because those are the ones you are, that the young people are the people who are going to be making the work in the future. So there's a few things in answer to your question. I hope that was useful and interesting. I do know that like I said, in many countries, people often work with very difficult conditions with few resources. So if we have few resources, then that's what we've got to work with, and it doesn't mean we can't make amazing work.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answer, which is clear and rich in information. But I still have another question about one of the barriers that young puppeteers can have is competence. And through your story, I heard that you got the opportunity to get where you learn puppetry, and where to how where and when to apply it. And for those young puppeteers who hardly get where to learn puppetry, how can you advise them to behave? Maybe in your time, it was not similar to this time, that we have some resources, maybe some materials that we can use. Maybe what can you just say about this to get enough competencies without this access to the formal or just classic schools to learn puppetry?
Mm. Well, I have to highlight the work that the Professional Training and the Research Commission of International UNIMA is doing, because we know that sometimes it's very difficult for people to have access to training schools in puppetry, that do whole degrees in puppetry. And I think one of the amazing things that the UNIMA Training and Research Commission is doing is rolling out a series of workshops which are beginning in Africa, focusing very much on Africa, African countries, African contexts. And I would advise the young people to join UNIMA if they haven't already, so that they will get information about these training courses that are going to be happening in Africa. I would encourage them to join the academy. These training courses are not going to be really, really long ones. They're not like 3 years. They're usually going to be 2-week courses or something like that. And some of them will be online and some of them will be in person. So I really encourage the young puppeteers to look out for what international UNIMA and the UNIMA centres in their own countries are doing. The African leaders of centres, UNIMA centres, are really skilled and active and proactive in developing the work and in finding these opportunities. So that's one thing that I would really, really flag up. I think also staying with the UNIMA centres in the different countries at the moment, I think it would be very, very useful and interesting for the different presidents or chairs of the different centres to gather information from the young people about what they would like training in, and then to maybe collaborate with each other. Neighbouring countries perhaps can set up short-term courses which train in particular aspects of puppetry, whether it's a technique of performance, or whether it's making, or whether it's putting together a project, working with people, working with communities. All of those are possible to deliver in kind of shorter courses, which are not, don't involve people going on, well, trying to find the money, which is very difficult, and going on 3, 4, 5-year training courses in schools in other countries. And that's how lots of people have learned puppetry in their lives anyway. That's basically what I did. I learned through a series of well, I learnt on the job actually by doing it, because I was fortunate enough to get this trainee puppetry job. But then I went and did lots of short courses in different places. I went on every puppetry training course, short training course that I could do. Most of them were 1 weekend or 1 week, or some of them were a little bit longer. And you gain the skills working and trying it out as well. So I think UNIMA Centres and International UNIMA has a big role to play in this, in bringing possibilities for training to places where there is limited training possibilities. But I also believe very, very strongly in peer support. So people who perhaps have had the opportunity to go to a country, another country, let's say, and do some training, to go back to their own country and to then share that knowledge, I think is really, really, really valuable, so that systems and communities of peer support across communities can also build up. And I think that's very valuable. So there's just a couple of things in response to that. People do need training in technical aspects of it. I suppose it also comes back to what your belief systems about pedagogy and pedagogical learning, because I do sort of depart from the idea that knowledge is not taught, knowledge is made as a co-creation between learner and tutor. So I think the meanings of the work, we can learn a technique, and we can probably learn a technique, some aspects of a technique. We can learn that in a training course that takes 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, whatever. But how we use that technique is kind of what matters in the longer term. So it's in the ability to adapt those techniques once you have certain basic grasp of them is important for sharing and disseminating the ideas and the practices as well. So yes, if you are lucky enough to be able to go and do a training course, then please share that. Go to your community and share that with others, so those others can then take it on further. And let's just encourage that as a practice, really. But also let's just continue to advocate nationally and internationally for puppetry to be recognized, and for there to be more support for puppetry. And I suppose the other thing is that in some countries, sorry, I'll shut up in a minute. I suppose there are other forms of performer training that may be more established. I had a meeting with UNIMA Greece a few weeks ago. Performer training is very well established in Greece in a variety of schools and academies. However, puppetry training is not so well established. So if we can work with our colleagues in theatre and drama and sculpture and making in general, so that they get interested in puppetry as well, then we might be able to find ways also of bringing puppetry into other schools and other trainings. So it's not always a standalone thing, but it's puppetry within storytelling, puppetry within dance, puppetry within drama, etc. I think it's very good. Then we can work across disciplines and get a much wider body of people interested in puppetry and then learning those skills as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cariad. That is very, 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 very amazing. And I would also like to mention that it's also one of the activities and initiatives that within UNIMA Burundi, as a young center of UNIMA in Burundi, that we've also been trying to propose and initiate. And I can say that we've been lucky to to be networking with the UNIMA Italy, which is now mentoring our activities.
Fantastic.
Yes, and we've also, as I mentioned in my introduction, that we've also sign and introduce the agreement, the twinning agreement, where we will be
Brilliant.
proposing, where we will be proposing those kind of activities, even behind the screens that we've already.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think it's brilliant that you have this partnership with UNIMA Italy, and it's really inspiring, and it's making me think of sort of what can British UNIMA do in this way as well. I think it's really good. And I haven't really talked about training online, but of course, you know, because we are networked, because we have the possibilities of meeting online, and even though sometimes the connections can be difficult, because the world is networked in this way, I think a lot of ideas and a lot of testing out and training can also happen online. And I think it's wonderful where there is a UNIMA centre that perhaps has a bit more infrastructure or more resources can support a younger centre. I also want to say well done for UNIMA Burundi, because what we are in touch, and what I see is that this is a young centre that is really, really active and really inspiring, not only in participating in international UNIMA, but really thinking about research, really thinking about training, really thinking about what the needs of puppetry are in Burundi as well. And I just think that's so inspiring. I actually think this mentoring of one centre to another is a really good idea. I'm wondering if we should actually look at this as a wider practice in international UNIMA, so that all centres are twinned with at least one other. I think that's a really really good way of promoting exchange. So yeah, we can do more online, and we can do more mentoring, and we can do more sharing of resources. And we can do that in the spirit of cooperation and collaboration and sharing. So that's also a really, really, really good way of encouraging young people to be involved.
Yeah. And I would like to mention that our country is known historically like I can say, by historically is known by horrible stories. Stories of war, stories of conflicts among Burundians.
Yeah.
And but now I can say that the country is heading to the stage or the step of reconciling among Burundians, so that among Burundians the ethnics which has been stay so long in conflicts, whether they can be reunite or be in conciliation. And this is, I can say, this is a good step that our country is now heading, though the very bad former years that we're experiencing and passed through this challenging and difficult period of killings and hatred among Burundians. And this is also the perception or the image which is perpetuating until today. Like I can say, in our region, the Great Lake region, and now that in DRC, the Republic of Democratic of Congo, is now war. People are in war, killing one another. And we are also hosting in Burundi. We are also hosting a huge number, which I can say uncontrollable number of refugees, mostly young women and children who are seeking refugee in Burundi. So
Okay.
those are all the narratives, the situations, the history, the image that we've born and grew, and that we also still live in our region. The stories of the narratives of killings, fleeing, and things like that. Those are stories which are very, very common and much more visible in our area. So that's also one of the motivation, one of the vocation, which probably pushed and drive some artists here in Burundi, also within UNIMA Burundi, in our creative works. We seek to have something like something like story, something which we can use as a tool, which we can use to tell our stories and also heal our communities and contribute. And that's why we can say that we are very honored to discover puppetry and also be in this community. I can say the community, UNIMA community, and also very lucky to be in twinning with UNIMA Italy, which have been mentoring and supporting our activities and listening to our voices, to our proposition. But we still have a lot of work to do, though we've already, due to the knowledge, due to the online training session between us and UNIMA Italy, that we've already received knowledge, skills that we've already acquired. It's huge, and we've already proposed some shows, some puppets. We already have some puppets in Burundi, which is not the case before we start the center, and we are up till today. We can say that we are stabilizing or making puppets present in our country. And but we still have a lot to do. As you mentioned, that puppetry has to be crafted with everything, with every object, with every material which is around us, which we can easily find around us. That's great, and we understand it. And but the community in which we live and in which we work is also challenging, because it's a community which is not accustomed for this kind of work, for this kind of show. It's a community which is sometimes marginalized theater. It's a community sometimes which if a young man or a young girl is presenting or is choosing the artistic career is not well understood. And also the environment, the area in which we are proposing all these, the area in which we are growing, we are working, is also very much challenging, because if I can say that based on on your presentation, which is huge, in our area is very, very rare to see someone who's much professional in the domain of art, as as that. So, and I think that these are the challenging and perceptions and the les préjugés, yes, if I can say, in which we work in. And though all those challenging, though all those barriers which is there and posed because of the area in which we are, we still struggle and we still fight to propose and work and share our stories. So I want to ask you, what do you feel yourself when practicing the puppetry in British or in Europe in general or other areas? What main challenges that you encounter? Because we here in Burundi, as I mentioned, we are on phase of structuring ourselves and searching ourselves and discovering ourselves and discover the puppetry art. And it's like some people and artists need to be heard. What is going on other areas, on other parts of the world? How do puppeteer do feel, do work, how are they valued? Because yeah, sometimes we feel when we create, when we have something, and in our local community, trying to propose our craft, our work, but some people just ignore, just don't pay so much attention. It can also discourage some artists. It can also make puppeteers feel like they can't impact people. They can't make difference. They can't raise their voices via the puppet and impose themselves. So I don't know whether you get my question, Cariad. Thank you very much.
Is the question about what are the challenges, or is the question about which stories are told, or something else?
Yes, it's a question, I think, about what challenges and how do you feel, how you yourself, you valued the value that they pay in your area as a professional puppeteer.
Okay, thank you. Well, obviously, I think anywhere in Europe, it might seem a poor comparison to say that the artists are worried about funding when they're coming from, a Western European country which has sort of had more funding, more possibilities, more training possibilities for a long time than certainly some parts of Africa. But I have to say that there is a funding crisis in Europe in general, and certainly in the UK. And I think that puppeteers are quite worried about that. And I am also quite worried about it because there is perhaps less work than there was 20 years ago or 10 years ago, perhaps fewer funding opportunities and perhaps less support for the arts. I think this is a crisis that the whole of Europe is going through, and I don't know how it will play out in the long term. But conversely, having said that, puppetry is everywhere actually in the UK, but it's often in places where it's often in mainstream theatre, but not as part of a puppet play, but it often appears in live drama, in big productions in the West End or in in big theatres. So there is a lot of puppetry happening, and I feel that that is really fantastic. I think in some ways it's a pity that some of the smaller puppetry work, which is just as good, is not supported quite as well. Like I said, I've been working with puppets for 30 years or something like that. And it's still the case over all of that period of time. It's still the case that there are kind of three main responses when you talk to people and you say that you do puppetry. One of those responses is, wow, that's fantastic, that's creative, that's imaginative, that's wonderful, that's beautiful, that's really a wonderful, interesting thing to do. Another response is, I don't really understand. What do you do exactly? There's people who don't get it, who don't understand what you really do, and then you explain the different ways in which you work, and they sort of say, "Oh, I never thought about that." So that's kind of good because it's spreading the word. So I feel about that. Well, I mean, I feel that it's a pity that puppetry is not more widely known, but I think it's good that people get to know about it. And the third one, which is the most frustrating one of all, is that people say, "Oh, do you get paid for that?" They sort of sometimes see it as something that is not that useful, and because of, often there's this culture that only things which produce produce an object, or produce a car, or produce a is about selling stuff, is really useful. And that is the most frustrating response. But personally as a puppeteer, I feel incredibly privileged that I have had the possibility to spend my life doing this in different ways. I mean, I have largely, not only, but I have largely been paid to survive in the world through my university work, and I've had the possibility to train a lot of people in puppetry, and that's also a privilege. The higher education situation in the UK is a little bit in crisis at the moment, and I just say this very transparently and openly, that they're closing a lot of theatre courses in general. And it's a sort of tricky time for anyone working in a university. So I feel anxious about that. I do feel anxious about it, and I feel that the arts and performing and storytelling is not as valued as it should be, because we need storytelling as human beings. It's the way which we process our experiences. You were talking about the horrific historical events that happened in Burundi, and the war that's happening in DRC, and people need art to communicate and to understand their history and their possibilities of the future. So I do really strongly believe that. I think it's been really amazing to work with puppets, and in lots of different, often very weird contexts, working with all kinds of ages, working with all kinds of backgrounds of people and so on. So I personally find that a real privilege, and I'm really happy that I've done that. And I have no regrets at all about choosing to work with puppets, because I think puppets are continuously fascinating to me. It is not an easy career route if you want to earn lots of money, and it will never be that, I think. It is not an easy career route in the sense that you are always looking for work, and I think that challenge is the same in most parts of the world, but to different degrees, to different sort of levels. There are a lot of people that have to do another job in order to do their puppetry work. So those are some of the challenges. I think what I find very inspiring is the way in which people from other disciplines are interested in puppets and find them expressive, and find them a useful way for articulating ideas. Like I told you, I work a lot with doctors, and there's been quite a lot of puppetry work done in the UK with medical staff, and they find it a wonderful way of training in teamwork, of training in collaboration, because when you're working on a puppet together, you know, there's this amazing video done by a surgeon called Dr. Roger Kneebone. That's actually his name. He's a surgeon and his name is Kneebone. That's really funny. But there's he says doing puppetry is like doing surgery because you're always working in close collaboration with others. You have to breathe together, you have to think together, you have to do things to another body in such a way that you either give it life or sustain its life in some way. And it's a very complex operation, but it's a wonderful thing to do. So I find it really interesting how people from other disciplines engage with puppetry as a way of understanding their own work, promoting, like I said, teamwork, collaboration, etc. And that's a positive thing, because if we can get puppetry into those other areas, it's good. Another challenge, I guess, and it's an ongoing challenge for puppeteers all over the world, is this idea that puppetry is only for children. I personally really enjoy working with children, and I have a lot of faith in working with the generations of the future. And I really, really enjoy enabling the imagination and dreams of children and young people. However, it is a challenge that a lot of people think puppetry is not for adults. And I have seen lots of really, really fantastic puppet theatre for adults. And I wish that all adults could see these shows so that they understand that it's not just for children. It's for anyone who has an imagination and can believe in that imagination. I always think, because I have been to the festival, the World Puppet Festival in Charleville, I've been to it a few times, and I always think this is a wonderful example of how an audience can learn. Because 40 years ago, 50 years ago, there was no audience for puppet theatre in Charleville-Mézières in France. And now the whole population of Charleville-Mézières loves the festival. They believe in puppetry. And I'm willing to bet that by far the majority of all of the adults in Charleville-Mézières have seen at least one puppet show. So I think this is another, we haven't talked about audiences, but we can train audiences as well. And the more that audiences have exposure to puppet theatre, the more they will understand it and support it. So I think anything about developing training or developing infrastructure or developing meeting points for young puppeteers is also about training the audiences. So, and I think Charleville-Mézières and other places, it shows that you can do that. And it brings income in. You know, the festival in Charleville brings in a huge amount of income for the town. It's a win-win.
Yes. I guess is training audience. I agree 100%. Yeah, and I think is one of the reasons we also within UNIMA Burundi thought to introduce such kind of discussions so that we can also put them on our platforms, and as the audience, Burundian audience, and everywhere around can see and hear what's happening in the puppetry world. It's also a kind of informing the audience and also promoting puppetry in the landscape of Burundi, artistic landscape of Burundi. Yeah, thank you very much. It's quite amazing and it's inspiring, Cariad. Thank you very much. And I think if there is also any other person who needs to speak or to say something, to ask a question, is very much welcomed, as we are heading to the
we are heading to
the end.
Hello, Alessandra.
Yes, Alessandra.
No, just I want to say that I think when there is this kind of meeting, we discover that in the country there is a difference, but also many common points.
Yes, it's
And this is very important to understand.
yeah.
I think puppetries are universal, not only for the technical
Yes.
things, but much more about the means and the desire and the power. This is always the same, always and everywhere the same for everybody. So this is great. This is really great. And thank you very much, Cariad, for this speech. It was very great to hear you. Yes. And also heard Eraste to talk about Burundi in this way.
That was very powerful.
Yes, I think this is very great moment. And thank you very much.
And thank you for your support in setting it up, Alessandra. That's really wonderful. And all the work you do in Africa is amazing.
It's a really big pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more enthusiastic I am about puppetry, which is a wonderful and lovely thing to experience. And I really believe in its power to change people's lives and to tell stories. And just to touch again on those stories that you were telling, Eraste, just about we know, at least, in my life, there are memories of the terrible conflicts in this area of the world. And if puppetry can in some way contribute towards that process of reconciliation, bringing people together, as we know it has done in other parts of the world. We know it's had some part to play in South Africa. We know it's had some part to play in South America. We know it's had some part to play in parts of Asia, telling stories of trauma, of atrocities, of difficult, awful times when people were not talking to each other. And if puppetry can play a role in that, and it can play a role in that, because the thing about puppetry is that it is unother, it's a distanced object, it's telling the story in a safe way, in some way, and it's able to really engage with those painful stories. If it can do more of that, bring people together to enable the truth about the past to happen. Because my understanding, because I've done a little bit work on memory studies and stuff, and traumatic pasts and everything. I think it's clear that people, in order for reconciliation to happen, the truth needs to be told and stories need to be heard. Some of those stories are agonizing. Some of those stories are just so dreadful. But in order for trauma to heal, those stories in some way need to be heard. And puppetry is a safe and creative and imaginative way of doing that, in such a way that people are not named necessarily, in such a way that people are not sort of not always playing themselves what happened, but something else is playing it for you. And that's a really big power of puppetry. So I really hope that it can have a role in that process, Eraste. And then the other part of what you were saying about all the refugees from DRC coming to Burundi, fleeing from the war, the young people and the women, those are people who also have stories to tell. And I really hope that puppetry can help them tell those stories.
Yeah, sure, for sure. You see, one thing that I can also mention is that puppet is peaceful and is lovely, because we've already crafted some puppets that we have here in Burundi, and we've already got the privilege to get them out and parade them. And yeah, for sure, there are some people who were scared, who were not have the ability and the emotion to receive the appearance, the physical appearance of a puppet. But and some other great part or huge part of the people were really, really much watching with admiration and coming to see with very much curiosity and suspicious to discover that kind of art. And also, yeah, puppetry, I can say puppetry also is cultural. It's cultural because yeah, we did craft a puppet which goes with our realities and play our music, and also try to spread some ways. Yeah, people that were really, really admiring and loving the work of art. And I think is also, though the challenges, is also our our task and our work that we must hold tightly and keep pushing and keep working and creating, so that we can also use puppet to bring people together, to be able to spread peaceful messages, to be able to visit all those communities which are with no hope. That's all we wish, that's all we are trying to do. Yeah, though in general, yeah, sure, the people are not much more, yeah, much more accustomed to that kind of creative work, but they are also easily to receive and easily to be informed. We can inform them, and we can also prepare the field, and also be able to work. Yeah, yeah, for sure, with the support of all the great puppeteers around the world that we'll be lucky to have within the networking of UNIMA, that we are very much, very much thankful to be networking with UNIMA networking. And also, yeah, thank you very much, Cariad, for all this you share, for accepting our invitation and our proposal.
Well, it's really an honor. It's really an honor. Thank you very much to you.
Yes. I don't know whether there are other intervention, and
a couple of people have written things in the chat. Thank you for your comments in the chat.
Yes, in the chat, there's Tina. I have no question, but I thank you, Cariad, for the presentation. How many beautiful projects and ways, and thank you, Erast and UNIMA Burundi, for this precious event and your enthusiasm. Thank you very much too, Tina.
Yeah, thank
yes,
you.
Yes, Tibiris. Yeah.
Thank you again for giving me another time to say something. What I would like just to say is just to thank Cariad for the time, for all what he was sharing with us. It was really amazing and inspiring, and it was also an honor to us to have her here, to hear from her, to hear from her what she did and what she's doing in UK, and this experience is going to help us just to continue growing our UNIMA Center in Burundi. And I also appreciated the aspect of just sharing with us, sharing with others what we know about puppetry, teaching each other, to look for some training around the world, from UNIMA and in other countries, so that you can just even come to train other colleagues. It's more amazing and inspiring, and I think this time was not a waste of time. It will help us just to keep growing little by little, and I can say that we learned so much, and just to thank her, just to thank her.
You're most welcome. If anyone wants to keep in touch, I've put my email in the chat. But thank you for your nice comments. That's very kind.
Thank you.
So, well, I think we are on time.
I think, well, yes, there is the time to say goodbye and thank you.
I really appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to future discussions and future meetings with you all. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for setting it up and organizing it. It was very inspiring also for me.
Well, thank you.
Goodbye to everybody.
Yes.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
Have a good
Yeah.
evening. Ciao. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cariad. Thank you, Arsandra. Thank you,
Ciao.
thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.